Okay, so good morning. So in the last classes of natural language processing, we have seen the different, the overall architecture of or the modules which make up natural language processing systems or natural language understanding systems. So several levels of language analysis is required for understanding the language. And we also saw the different terminologies associated with the English language also, linguistics part of the English language. So, given that we have covered the basic parts, now we will move on to each of the analysis that we have to do on the language in order to understand language. And the most basic form of analysis which we have to do is known as morphological analysis or morphological parsing. Okay. So, as we know, you all also been parallelly studying compiler construction as a subject, right? Or compiler design. And in that also, when you look at language, to analyze language, the first step you do is lexical analysis, or to identify the most basic units of the language, or the tokens, and get the tokens or recognize the tokens, and then give whatever has been recognized onto the next level, which is the syntax analysis phase. Similarly, here also, we look at the most basic constructs which make up language. That is what we look at first. So, in the case of language, natural language, the most basic constructs we'll talk about again is the words, but we have a more basic concept called morphemes, which we will come to. Okay, so morphological parsing is the first step which we do on natural languages. And what do you mean by parsing? Parsing means taking an input and producing some linguistic structure as the output. And this parsing can be done at morphological level or syntactic level, semantic level, discourse level, and so on. So right now we are going to talk about morphological parsing. Now, what is morphological parsing? It is a problem of recognizing that a word, say like foxes, is a word, right? It breaks down into its component morphemes. Or morphemes, we said, are the most basic structure in language. Okay. So the morphemes present here are fox and the es part. Okay, so morphological parsing is a process of recognizing that a word like foxes breaks down into its component morphemes, that is fox and es, and building a structured representations for this composition. Okay, or say for example, given the surface or input is also known as the surface input. Okay, so given an input, say a word like going as a word, and the morphologically parsed output for this will be the verb go. Go is the root word or the stem part of the word going, and it is a verb plus the gerund ing. So we want to split this word called going into its most basic constructs or most basic morphemes. And morphemes are the parts which make up that particular word, say go plus ing. And along with that, you need to give information about what type of a stem is this? Is it a noun or a verb, and so on. So this is what morphological parsing is, to take a word, split it into its different component morphemes, and also give some morphological features of that particular morpheme. Okay. There is another terminology associated or called orthographic rules. Okay, it's a set of conventions for writing a language like spelling, hyphenation, capitalization, word breaks. So we will come to this later. But right now we are talking about morphological parsing. Right. So English morphology. What do you mean by a morpheme? It is a minimal meaning bearing unit in a language. That is a definition for a morpheme. So we already saw example. Okay. And morphology is the study of how words are built up from smaller meaning-bearing units called morphemes. Morpheme is the most basic meaning-bearing unit in a language, and morphology is the study of how the words are built up from morphemes. Say, for example, cat plus s becomes cats. So this is the morphological part. So there are two classes of morphemes. One is a stem part and affixes. Okay, stem is the main morpheme which supplies meaning to the word. Main ആയിട്ടുള്ളത്. That is, say if it is cat is main, S gives some extra meaning to it, right? Similarly, in the earlier example, going. So go is a stem. It is the main morpheme which supplies meaning to the word. That is called the stem. And there can be different categories of affixes also. So affixes are morphemes that are attached to the root or the stem and gives extra meaning to the word. So you can have affixes can be of any of these categories. Say you can have prefix, that is the morpheme comes before the root or the stem. So buckle is a word, and you have un which is added to become unbuckle. So it is a prefix. That is, you are adding un before buckle, right? So it is a prefix. Similarly, you can have suffix where your morpheme comes after the stem. So eat becomes eats. So that is a suffix. Then you can have infix also, which is very rare in English. Say for example, passerby becomes passers-by, or you can this is it's actually very rare in English. Say for example, instead of saying fantastic, you can say fan freaking tastic. That is some sort of a new gen word, I think. Right. So actually, it's very rare in English to have infix, morphemes. Circumfix means you Okay, circumfix means you have both a suffix and a prefix added to the stem in order to modify the meaning of the word. But that is not, there are none in English. But there are examples given in the textbook about German words, which the stem is modified using both a suffix and a prefix together. Okay, that is what is called a circumfix. Okay, so here we have another example of unbelievably is a word. So here believe is the stem, right? Believe is the word or the morpheme which gives meaning, main meaning to this word. And you have three affixes added to this. You have un and able and able. So three affixes are added to become unbelievably. Okay. Now, English, in general, English usually have lesser number of affixes per word. A maximum of 4 or 5 affixes are added to the word. But in Turkish, 10 affixes are common, and such languages are said to be agglutinative. And I've heard that Malayalam is also agglutinative language. Because you can have any number of affixes added to it. Say, for example, Poguga. Poguga can be modified as, say, Poi Kondirikkunilla Irunengil. I mean, you can have any number of such affixes added. So, such words, such languages are said to be agglutinated. Okay. Okay. Now we are moving on to how words can be derived from morphemes. There are mainly 4 methods to combine morphemes to create words. Okay, in English, we are talking about English. Inflection. So these are terms which we need to be familiar with when we are talking about natural language processing. Just so understand it. Inflection is a combination of a word stem with another grammatical morpheme, usually resulting in a word of the same class. That is the main thing about inflection. Okay, a word, say for example, pass. Okay, pass is a word. It's a stem, and you are combining it with another morpheme, say passes, and it results in a word of the same class. So pass here is a verb. Okay, and passes, it actually passes becomes what? It is a variant or a modified version of pass itself. So I'm saying I am passing through, that meaning pass, right? And she passes, I pass, she passes. It's a third person singular. That is what passes is, right? It has the same meaning as pass itself, but it is used in third person singular. And past is also has the same meaning. It is also a verb. All the three are verbs, but with slight variations, right? So that is what inflection is, a combination of a word stem with a grammatical morpheme, usually resulting in a word of the same class. Class in the sense, the part of speech class. Okay, all the three are verbs. That is what inflection is. Now, derivation is different. It is a combination of a word stem with a grammatical morpheme, usually resulting in a word of a different class. Okay, often with a meaning hard to predict. Okay, so derivation, in the case of inflection, the meaning is also similar, and the category of the word, the class of the word is also the same. In the case of derivation, you are combining the stem with a morpheme, another morpheme, usually resulting in a word of a different class. Maybe a verb becomes a noun, or noun becomes a verb, and so on. And the meaning also will be different. Say, for example, happy. Happy is an adjective, happy person. Now, when you combine happy with ness, it becomes happiness, which is actually a noun, which is a different class. Or let us say kind. Kind and unkind, both are adjectives, but the meanings are totally different. Okay, so that is what we call derivation. Now, compounding is combination of multiple word stems together. Okay, example, dog and house are combined together to form dog house. Next is cliticization. It's a combination of word stem with a clitic. Or a clitic is a morpheme that acts syntactically like a word. It is generally a word, but it is in reduced form. Say, for example, instead of have, we are putting it as IV, right? So this is cliticization. Combine I have is combined to form I. Right, this is cliticization. So these are different methods where morphemes combine to form words. Okay. Now we finally come to what is morphological parsing. So initially, what did we say? We said parsing words in the first slide. We said morphological parsing is a problem of recognizing that a word breaks down into its component morphemes, and component morphemes are identified, and along with that the morphological properties of those morphemes are also identified. That is what morphological parsing is. So for it's the same here. Words are split into their stem plus affixes, and the morphological features of these morphemes are also identified. Say for example, cats, which is an example which you already saw. So when you say morphological parsing, the input is cats, but the output is cat is a stem here, and you have to say that it is a noun, and when you say cats, it is in the plural form, right? So this information has to be output. So cat is the stem plus it's a noun in the singular form. City is the stem plus noun plus plural form. Geese, correspondingly, it has goose is the stem plus it's a noun plus plural form, and so on. So morphological parsing is basically given an input word like this. You have to identify what is a stem and what is a stem and what are the affixes, and along with that you have to identify uh, what is the category. So all these morphological properties also have to be identified, right? So the input to a morphological parser is the actual text, the basic text which we need to convert it to the different morphemes along with the morphological features. Right. So input is a text, and along with that we need to give information about the actual language itself. Right. So what are the things which we have to give as input? So the first thing is the lexicon or the dictionary. Okay, so dictionary means it contains all valid words of the language, right? So here also lexicon means it has a list of all valid stems along with the affixes, and also some basic information about stems, what part of speech it belongs to, and so on, right? Okay, so that is what a lexicon is. Lexicon is basically the dictionary. It has a valid stems as well as the affixes along with the part of speech and other basic information about the voice. And next input is what is known as morphotactics. So morphotactics, it has what is known as morpheme ordering. Okay. So what do you mean by morpheme ordering? That is, which classes of morphemes can follow other classes inside a word. Say for example, so when you have plurals, okay, and S follows the word, right? It follows the word, not it precedes the word. So what are the different orderings of the different morphemes? So that information is what we call as morphotactics, and this information also has to be provided as input to the morphological parser. Okay, now the third information is what is known as orthographic rules. So orthographic rules, a formal definition which we already saw is orthographic rule is a set of conventions for writing a language. So it includes a normal spelling, the hyphenation, capitalization, word breaks, emphasis, punctuation. All these together form or are formally what we call orthographic rules. But here what we are focusing on is spelling rules. That is, when you have changes that occur in a word, that is when two morphemes are combined. Let us say city is combined with S to form its plural. So it is not C-I-T-Y-S like dogs or cats. It is not simply adding an S, but the spelling changes, right? So C-I-T-I-E, yes. So what are those changes which happen when you're combining the morphemes together? So that is what makes up the orthographic rules. So only if we have the information about valid stem and their affixes and what ordering are the morphemes, what order are they placed together, and what are the spelling changes which happen when you are combining two morphemes together. So if all this information is given to the morphological parser, then the parser can actually read the input string and then generate what we said is, that is, it can read the string and generate this information, that is the stem along with the POS, the whether it is a plural or not, what is a part of speech it belongs to, and so on. So this is the transformation which we require in the case of morphological parsing, right? So next we will look at how the lexicon is. So the first input we said is a lexicon, right? Now how is this lexicon going to be represented in the morphological parser? Now, generally, when we talk about a dictionary or a lexicon, it's a repository of words, and the simplest lexicon is an explicit list of every word in the language. Okay, we can just list out all the words in the language. So, in a normal dictionary, also we have it that way. But in the case of when we want to deal with machines, we want not only the stems, that is a basic words, but also whatever transformation. Say for example, go is a word which is there in the dictionary, right? And go can get transformed when you change the what the tense of the word. Say go becomes went as past tense, and went as past participle, and also you can say going when it is present continuous, and so on. Based on the tense it can change, or you say goes, goes, goes. That is when you're using with third person singular. She goes, right? So there are lots of variants of this same verb which you're talking about. So if all of them have to be listed out, it means it will take a lot of space, right? So that is not a feasible option. So that is why we use another way of representing a lexicon, which is a finite state lexicon. We already know what a finite state automaton is. You must have studied in the last semester what a finite state automaton is. It is actually a recognizer for regular languages or regular expressions, or basically it is a recognizer for what are known as tokens. So you are already studying the compiler construction. So in that you must have in lexical analysis what the basic thing or basic term to be identified. In the case of any programming language, is the tokens, and which can be represented using regular expressions, and an isomorphic or the corresponding machine which we have for a regular expression is a finite state automaton. And just like that, here also all the terms in the lexicon can be represented using a finite state automaton. Okay. So computational lexicons have all the stems and affixes along with the representation of morphostatics of the language. That is, so along with the words, the affixes and the morphotactics, that is represented using a finite state automaton here. Okay. Okay, so this is a general example of what a finite state automaton is. Actually, we are all familiar with it. You have a set of states uh, and you have got transitions and symbols on which the transition take place. You have got a final state or accepting state which is represented like this. So these two are accepting states. So here you start at Q naught and you are supposed to recognize all these words. Okay, these are some of the words which are supposed to be recognized by this finite state automaton. So you've got fox is a word. Okay, so you start at Q naught and fox is actually a regular noun. Regular noun means fox followed by an s gives you fox. Okay, that not it is foxes, but here for simplicity's sake we are assuming fox followed by s gives you its plural. Okay, but irregular nouns are those like goose. Goose, you don't say gooses, it is geese. That is the plural of it, right? Okay, so this is a general way of representing it. So you give this as input. If it is a regular noun, this particular path is taken. That is also recognized because foxes or cat is actually, do not get confused. We'll use cat as an example. So cat is a regular noun. So when you have cat as the input, the transition is to this and it is recognized because it is a valid word. Now, if you add an s, it becomes a plural. It is also a valid word, so that is also being recognized. Now, in order to recognize the irregular nouns here, we also have irregular singular noun. SD stands for singular and PL stands for plural. So that also can be directly recognized. So all these words can be recognized by this particular finite state automaton, and this finite state automaton is for English nominal inflection. So we already talked about inflection, right? When we bring about a transformation, it belongs to the same category. That is, when it is plural, it is still a noun, right? So this is a finite state automaton for that. And this is another example of verbs, a finite state automaton for English verb inflection. So verb, these are the words which are supposed to be recognized. So when you have a regular verb means walk is a regular verb. So walk, its past tense is walked, right? You add an ed. So that becomes the past tense. But if you take cut, past tense is cut itself. So that is called an irregular verb. Okay. So this is, if you look at this finite state automaton, you start at Q naught and you have a regular verb, you transition to Q1, it is recognized. Walk will be recognized. Okay. Now when you add an ed, that is, it becomes past tense and that is also recognized. It is a valid word. Similarly, past participle also takes an ed. Okay, now if you think about irregular past verb means you have cut irregular, that is recognized here. Similarly, regular verb with an ing can be recognized through this path, or regular verb with an s, say walks or cuts. Okay, that can be recognized with this. That is third person singular. That can also. So you, if you have to think about other, let us say, if you want to think about sang, sing and sang, right? That is recognized here. But irregular normal, irregular past is recognized here. Irregular present is not recognized. So for that you need to add other what, pointers like this. That is what. Okay, so this is another example of a finite state automaton. Okay, this is for an adjective. It is actually similar. Say, for example, if you have clear as an adjective, so just to recognize clear as a word, you go through this epsilon because there is no un added to it, and clear, that is being recognized. Clearer can be, or clearly can be recognized, also be recognized, and unclear can also be recognized. Okay, that is the recognizer for this. Now, you can have other adjectives which do not take this un also. Say, for example, big, you don't say unbig, right? So, that can be, that can go through this path. it takes an epsilon and then big, and then that is recognized, and bigger or biggest and no, biggerly is not, so that cannot be accepted, right? So appropriately you have to make the finite state automata appropriately. Okay. Okay, this is a little more complex because it stands for derivational morphology. So derivational morphology, we said we might combine morphemes to form new words which don't belong to the same category. Say for example, a noun which is recognized. An example given in the textbook is fossil. So fossil is a noun, and you add IZD, fossilize becomes a verb, right? So it is also recognized. Fossilization can also be accepted. Fossilizer is also accepted. Okay. It need not necessarily work for all that. Okay. So this is an example for a derivational morphology type of uh, FSA. I was looking at one example. What example can we think about a verb? A verb can be correct. Say if it is uh, correct as an adjective. Say sing is a verb. Sing can be recognized by this. You cannot attach an IV, etc. and so on. Okay. So we have to appropriately make the finite state automata corresponding to the rules of the language. Okay, this is a more expanded FSA. Like in the original example here, what we said is it's a regular noun. So regular noun means it it can be a fox, or it can be cat, or it can be sheep, or so on. So in order for all that specific words to be incorporated, this regular noun has to be further expanded. Okay, so that is what is shown here. Look, FOX is fox, and you take an epsilon transition for fox to be recognized, and FOXS is also being accepted here, although it is not correct, which we will come to the correction part later. But we are assuming foxes is also part of the dictionary or the lexicon. Similarly, we've got cat being recognized here in this part, and cats recognized here. Goose is recognized as well as geese is recognized, and so on. So this is a very detailed or expanded finite state automaton for some of the English nouns along with their inflections. Okay.